Have you ever wondered what really makes one city feel so vibrant and alive, while another just feels, well, kind of sterile or restricted? It's a question that goes so much deeper than just buildings or money. And as we're about to see, it often boils down to a fundamental choice. Do we nurture our communities, or do we try to control them?
So what is it? What's the secret sauce? What's that key ingredient that lets a city become a place where people can actually, truly flourish?
Okay, let's just get right to it. Some really fascinating research argues that the answer is surprisingly direct. It's not about some abstract policy or a complicated economic plan. Nope. It's about who is in the driver's seat making the decisions. The entire character of our cities, how livable they are, is a direct result of the choices made by its leaders. So, to really unpack this idea, the research lays out this powerful framework. Think of it as a tale of two cities, each defined by a totally different approach to governing. It's a way to decode what a city really cares about by looking at whether they choose to nurture or to control. This right here is the core idea. The framework looks at city spending not just as, numbers on a spreadsheet, but as a philosophy. Nurturing investments, that's all about building up the community's well-being. Think parks, health, arts. On the flip side, controlling investments are about enforcing order. It's a really sharp lens for seeing what a city actually values. And this just lays it out perfectly, doesn't it? On the nurturing side, you've got things like parks and rec, public health, arts and culture, education. It's the stuff that builds a community from the ground up. Then on the other side, the controlling spending, that's police, criminal justice, penalties. It's a totally different approach to holding the community together. All right, so let's put this framework to the test. Let's see how it actually plays out in the real world. First up, we've got Washington, D.C., a city with a political story that's unlike anywhere else in America. And that history, it is absolutely key to understanding its priorities today. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around this, but for almost 100 years, the people living in D.C. had zero say in how their city was run. They were governed by commissioners appointed by the federal government. That started to change in the 1960s, with activists like a young Marion Barry leading the Free D.C. movement. It was this powerful grassroots push for self-governance, and when they succeeded in 1973 with the Home Rule Act, it was just monumental. For the first time in generations, residents, most of whom were African American, could finally elect their own leaders. And you have to understand, that fight was so critical because of the city's deep history. As the civil rights leader Mary Church Terrell said way back in 1940, D.C.'s location in a slaveholding region had consequences that lasted for decades. The struggle for home rule was, at its heart, a struggle for representation against a long, long history of being disenfranchised.
Okay, now let's switch gears and look at our second city, Kansas City, Missouri. And this place, well, it tells a very different story. The big political force here wasn't a grassroots fight for self-rule. It was the complete opposite, a top-down consolidation of power by a massive political machine. For more than 50 years, the Pendergast political machine basically ran the whole show in Kansas City. It controlled everything through favors and voter fraud, running the city like it was a private business. It wasn't until decades after the machine finally fell apart that African-American voices, with the help of groups like Freedom, Inc., finally started to break through and win seats on the city council in 1963.
And get this, that top-down control wasn't just political, it was literally built into the map of the city. A super influential developer named J.C. Nichols used racially restrictive covenants to enforce segregation. He's the one who famously made Troost Avenue a hard dividing line. It's a classic, brutal example of redlining that shaped Kansas City for generations to come. Okay, so we've got these two totally different paths to power, one born from a community fighting for its voice, the other from a history of machine control and segregation. So what? What does that actually do to a city? What are the real, tangible results of these histories? Well, the data shows a difference that is just staggering. Just look at these milestones. D.C. elected its first black mayor 16 years before Kansas City did. It got its first female police chief 15 years earlier. And when you look at representation on the city council, D.C. had 15% black female representation a full 30 years before Kansas City. That's a whole generation. This isn't just trivia. It's a direct reflection of two completely different political DNAs. And that's the thing. That difference in leadership DNA, it leads straight to different priorities. It shapes how the money gets spent,
how the streets get designed, and what life is actually like for the people there.
So let's follow the money. In DC, you can literally see the legacy of that activist history in the city budget. A majority of the discretionary spending, 55%, goes toward those nurturing investments. The leaders, who came right out of the community they were representing, put a priority on things like community services and public health.
Now, compare that to Kansas City. On average, between 2015 and 2020, a staggering 2/3 of the budget went to controlling investments. In fact, they spent more than double on public safety than on all the nurturing categories combined. That's a clear echo of a very different set of historical priorities.
And look, this isn't just about some abstract percentages in a budget. This huge difference in how money is spent directly shapes the physical world. The streets, the parks, the whole feel of the city, and the day-to-day experience of living there.
Take walkability, for instance. DC, with its focus on community and public services, invested a ton in public transit. The result? It's considered a walker's paradise with a score over 76. Kansas City, shaped by a different past, put its money on car-centric development, leaving it with a score of just 35. That is a real, everyday outcome of different leadership values.
The impact goes even deeper, affecting quality of life in some really profound ways. A 2020 study from the Georgetown Institute ranked cities on inclusion, justice, and security for women. Washington, D.C. ranked, get this, number 3 in the entire country. And in that same study, Missouri, where Kansas City is the largest city, ranked 38th. The research argues this huge gap is no accident. It's directly linked to those deep differences in who's in charge and the nurturing policies that tend to follow when leadership is more representative.
This quote from an African-American urban planner in Kansas City, which was captured in the research, it really just puts a human voice to all of these statistics. It speaks to this feeling that, systemically, priorities have historically left entire communities behind, and that it's a direct result of who has and who has not been in power.
So, what's the big takeaway here? At the end of the day, it's that who leads our cities matters a lot. Having representative leadership isn't just symbolic. It directly shapes the budgets, the priorities, and the very ground we walk on. The research shows a clear line. More diverse leadership tends to create more nurturing investments. And those investments, in turn, create cities that are more equitable, sustainable, and just plain more livable for everyone.
And all of this leaves us with one final thought. This isn't just a story about DC and Kansas City, right? It's a lens we can use to look at any city. So it kind of makes you stop and ask, how well does the leadership in your own community actually reflect the people who live there? And how might that be shaping the place you call home?